Real Estate Exam Questions 2026 Practice Tests and Answers. Flashcard 1. A residential zone requires at least 75 square feet per lot. The developer is reserving 25% of the land for streets, sidewalks, and a community center. The tract of land for the development consists of 175 acres. How many residential lots are available for development? Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is 4 equals 5 equals 5 equals 62 residential lots. Flashcard 2. Which element is not essential in a valid real estate sale contract? Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is an earnest money deposit. Flashcard 3. The owner of a hardware store has filed for bankruptcy and the real estate is up for sale. The money that the property will bring at auction is best described as which type of value? Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is liquidation value. Flashcard 4. A licensee makes a statement that is material to the transaction as though it were a fact when the licensee does not know whether this statement is true or false, and the buyer relies on the statement. As a result of the statement made by the licensee, the buyer suffers damages. This situation constitutes. Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is fraud. Flashcard 5. A man earned $7,500 commission by selling a coin-operated laundry business, which has 6 more years before the expiration of its present lease. The man. Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is must be registered with the Florida Real Estate Commission as a real estate licensee. Flashcard 6. The Florida Real Estate Commission is empowered by law to. Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is reprimand, fine, or otherwise discipline licensees. Flashcard 7. Which secondary market participant is a guarantor of government-insured and government-guaranteed loans? Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is Ginnie Mae. Flashcard 8. 3 claimants are requesting relief from the Real Estate Recovery Fund. All 3 claimants were named in a single judgment the same real estate transaction. What is the maximum payment from the Recovery Fund for this claim? Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is $50. Flashcard 9. The formula to calculate the overall capitalization rate is. Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is NOI divided by value or price. Flashcard 10. A seller transfers title to a buyer with a general warranty deed. In which clause of the deed does the seller define the quality of ownership interest conveyed to the buyer? Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is Habendum. Flashcard 11. Which entity may not be registered as a real estate brokerage? Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is Corporation Sole. Flashcard 12. The financial term applied to the use of borrowed funds to finance the purchase of an office building is. Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is leverage. Flashcard 13. A developer who wants to develop a new subdivision must submit. Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is a subdivision plat map to the Planning Commission. Flashcard 14. Which governmental entity must be informed when the FREC takes disciplinary action against one of their licensees? Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is division of Florida condominiums, timeshares, and mobile homes. Flashcard 15. A mortgage in which changes in the interest rate may cause changes in the monthly payment amount is called. Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is an adjustable rate mortgage. Flashcard 16. A prospective tenant purchased a rental list from a broker and then rented a duplex that the list said included all utilities. The tenant discovered that only water was included in the rent and notified the broker within the legislated time limit. The tenant is entitled to. Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is 100% of the fee paid. Flashcard 17. The original law requiring that the annual percentage rate be disclosed to consumers was there. Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is Truth in Lending Act. Flashcard 18. Which disclosure must be given to the buyer of both new and resale residential condominium units? Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is declaration. Flashcard 19. A real estate license may be revoked without prejudice for which action? Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is issuance of a license by mistake of the Commission. Flashcard 20. A provision in all mortgages that allows the delinquent mortgagor to avoid foreclosure by paying all the back mortgage payments, late penalties, and costs of collection up until the time of foreclosure sale is the. Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is equity of redemption. Flashcard 21. The duties of a real estate licensee owed to a buyer or a seller who engages the real estate licensee as a single agent do not include. Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is limited confidentiality, unless waived in writing by a party. Flashcard 22. Which survey term is associated with a metes and bounds description? Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is point of beginning. Flashcard 23. Depreciation cost recovery. Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is an allowable deduction that requires no current outlay of cash. Flashcard 24. Failure to comply with the statute of frauds will result in. Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is an unenforceable contract. Flashcard 25. You have been hired to appraise the local public library building. The approach that is likely to be the most relevant is the. Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is cost approach. Flashcard 26. In a deed, the warranty of quiet enjoyment pertains to. Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is peaceful possession undisturbed by others' claims of title. Flashcard 27. Within what period of time must the landlords of 5 or more units notify tenants in writing of the method used to hold security deposits? Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is 30 days. Flashcard 28. Title to real property is technically conveyed when a deed is. Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is voluntarily delivered and voluntarily accepted. Flashcard 29. Which federal law made bans which advertising a federal offense? Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is Truth in Lending Act Tiller. Flashcard 30. Requirements of a valid deed do not include. Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is signature of a competent grantee. Flashcard 31. An individual who typically finds a tenant for property and collects a fee is referred to as. Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is rental agent. Flashcard 32. A woman has homesteaded her residence. Her home has an assessed value of $279. She is a non-veteran who is totally and permanently disabled as a result of a serious car accident. She is also legally blind. What is her cumulative county tax exemption on her homesteaded residence? Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is $60,000. Flashcard 33. Which entity is a primary mortgage lender that does not accept demand deposits? Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is mortgage lenders. Flashcard 34. El appraiser has assigned the following weights to 3 adjusted sale prices comparable $3 into 52.5 40% rate comparable $2 into 90 35% rate comparable $3 into 12 25%. What is the estimated market value of the subject property? Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is $50. Flashcard 35. Eligible homestead owners may transfer up to what amount of their Save Our Homes SOH benefit from their previous homestead to a new homestead. Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is $500. Flashcard 36. Which statement is true regarding the monthly payments on a 30-year fully amortized loan? Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is initially, interest is the larger portion of the payment. Flashcard 37. Which expense is subtracted to derive NOI? Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is vacancy and collection losses. Flashcard 38. To qualify for a conventional mortgage loan, the borrower's TOR must not exceed what percent? Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is 36%. Flashcard 39. A man owns a farm in fee simple. He deeds the farm to a friend until the friend dies, at which time a woman will acquire a fee simple title to the farm. The woman's interest in the farm is A. Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is remainder estate. Flashcard 40. A tenant signed a 10-year lease requiring a monthly base rent of $19 plus 2% of all monthly gross sales volume over $95. The tenant also must pay all property taxes, insurance, and other costs normally considered property owner's costs. This is A. Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is net lease. Flashcard 41. Which individual is exempt from the continuing education requirement? Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is real estate licensee who is also a Florida licensed attorney. Flashcard 42. Sal's associate Terry Stufer may have which information entered on his license, if applicable? Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is Terry Stufer, LLC. Flashcard 43. Local government exercises its greatest effect on the real estate business by. Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is using zoning, taxation, and the planning process. Flashcard 44. Which statement is false regarding a corporation for profit that is doing business as a real estate broker? Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is: all stockholders must be registered with the FREC as inactive brokers. Flashcard 45. A man is a 72-year-old retired college professor. The local lender to whom the man applied for a 30-year mortgage denied the man's loan application, even though he has sufficient income from his pension plan and an excellent credit history. Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is: the lender's actions violate the Equal Credit Opportunity Act. Flashcard 46. A real estate company represents a motel owner who wishes to list one of his motels for sale. The owner has told the listing agent that he does not want to sell the motel to any racial minorities. Which statement is true? Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is: to refuse to sell or lease any real property based on a party's race is a violation of the Federal Civil Rights Act of 1866. Flashcard 47. Which individual must hold an active real estate license? Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is: a person who sells timeshare periods for customers. Flashcard 48. A buyer who obtains a mortgage loan that covers the purchase of a condominium plus furniture, appliances, and other personal property such as towels and kitchen utensils has a. Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is: package mortgage. Flashcard 49. A comparable property has one more bedroom, $8,000, and is on a slightly larger lot, $2,000, than the subject property. The comparative market analysis requires a net adjustment of. Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is minus $10,000 to the comparable property. Flashcard 50. Which action is not a requirement under the TILA-RISPA Integrated Disclosure Rule TRID? Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is: give mortgage applicants a list of competing lenders so they can comparison shop for the best rate. Flashcard 51. A broker's license was involuntary inactive for 2 years and 1 month. To operate again as an active licensee, the broker must complete. Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is: FREC course. I am passed the Sales Associates licensing exam. Flashcard 52. The bundle of legal rights associated with real property ownership does not include the right of. Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is intent. Flashcard 53. A person must hold an active real estate license if for express or implied compensation the person. Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is advertises a list of available rental properties. Flashcard 54. In Florida, real property is assessed on January 1 of each year, and property taxes become a lien on the property on. Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is January 1, the same year. Flashcard 55. Right to survivorship is contained in which tenancy? Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is tenancy by the entireties and joint tenancy. Flashcard 56. A real estate broker has been hired to manage an apartment complex on behalf of the landlord. How must the broker as agent handle the receipt of security deposits and advance rent? Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is place the funds in the broker's escrow account. Flashcard 57. A commercial tenant pays a fixed rent each month. The landlord pays the property taxes, hazard insurance, and maintenance expenses. The tenant has what type of lease? Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is: a gross lease is a lease in which the tenant agrees to pay a fixed rental amount, and the landlord pays all expenses related to the property such as real estate taxes, insurance, and maintenance costs. Residential leases are usually gross leases. Flashcard 58. Which action associated with water rights will cause the uncovering of additional land caused by the gradual receding of water? Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is reliction. Flashcard 59. Which lien is classified as a voluntary lien? Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is vendor's lien. Flashcard 60. A buyer offered $225 for a seller's property. The seller countered at $220. The buyer did not accept the seller's counteroffer. The seller told her broker that she was revoking the counteroffer and accepting the buyer's original offer. Which statement is true regarding this situation? Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is: the seller cannot now accept the original offer because it was killed by the counteroffer. Flashcard 61. Which action does not terminate a single-agent brokerage relationship with the seller? Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is withdrawal of an offer to purchase. Flashcard 62. In Florida, which type of brokerage relationship is presumed? Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is transaction broker. Flashcard 63. The lead-based payment disclosure must be given to. Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is tenants and buyers of all residential property built before 1970. Flashcard 64. A buyer has made an earnest money deposit of $10 on a house selling for $94.55. A local lender has agreed to lend 85% of the selling price at 4.5% interest for 30 years. If the buyer's closing costs amount to $5.75, how much more cash must the buyer produce at closing? Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is $5.15 before $15 equals $1.45 down and $1.75 plus $1.75 clay cost equals $1.75. $12 buyer cost $1.15 earnest money equals $5.15 cash at clay. Flashcard 65. The appropriate type of brokerage relationship is determined by their. Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is broker. Flashcard 66. Which business entity may not register as a real estate broker? Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is corporation sole. Flashcard 67. Which type of value takes into consideration an individual's equity and income tax implications? Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is investment. Flashcard 68. Within how many days must the landlord notify the tenant of intentions to claim part of the security deposit? Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is 30. Flashcard 69. Which item would be classified as a fixed expense in the calculation of net operating income? Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is hazard insurance. Flashcard 70. Which requirement is one of the essential elements of a valid real estate contract? Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is legality of object. Flashcard 71. An investor's own funds used to purchase investment real estate are called. Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is equity. Flashcard 72. Which instrument is usually recorded? Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is mortgage. Flashcard 73. Which disclosure form must be signed by the buyer and the seller in certain non-residential transactions where two associates act as single agents for the buyer and the seller in the same transaction? Think of the answer before the reveal. The answer is designated sales associate notice.